Aloha and welcome to Ehana Kako. We're here every week on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Kelii Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. As we look around our state, we've got beautiful people, beautiful places, beautiful nature, but there's a dark side to paradise, and emerging as you walk around town, you see homeless people. You see people who are not living the paradise that we should be for all people. And one of the reasons for this, we're bold enough to say, is because of government policy. Oftentimes we look to government to be the solution, but in many ways, government policies create the problem. One man knows this very well. He's Ted Abrams, who served for 18 years as a judge in Oregon and today works with national organizations to get the focus off of providing welfare and onto getting people to work. And that's why he's in an organization that promotes a concept we'll talk about called full employment. I'm delighted that he's joining us in studio today, and we're going to learn a lot. Judge Ted Abrams, aloha.
Thank you. It's great being here.
Well,
I really appreciate it.
I'm glad you're here. How do you like our lovely islands?
Oh, love your islands, and I've loved them since I was about 15 years of age, so that's 60 years ago.
Well, how about that? You know, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so very important, I think, in our country that we realign the way that we reach out to help the poor.
I agree. And no, it's more than important. It's critical, and it's really critical to the young, particularly the young people.
Let me ask you a personal question before we get into the subject at hand. As you sat on the bench for 18 years, which followed actually several years with the Peace Corps, what did you learn about human nature that you use today in tackling the problem of dealing with welfare?
I basically, sitting on the bench, you see everything. I mean, I did everything from traffic stops to murder. And you see all aspects of American life. And I guess the one that really carried over to me in the welfare arena is everybody can be spoiled, and everybody needs a job, and everybody needs a sense of purpose. And the welfare system really has destroyed quite a bit of that.
When you talk about purpose, I think back to my own family. That's where I learned about my purpose from my mother and father, and the way they challenged me and asked me to take a look at values and so forth. A lot of your work deals with restoring the role of the American family. You want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the cornerstone of civilization is the family. And I was unbelievably fortunate. I had spectacular parents and grew up in a very loving situation. But what has happened in the welfare system, and this really bothers me greatly, is we changed the system, with the Great Society, and that was about 1968. That's about the period of time where Johnson came out with the Great Society, and I think well intended. But when you've added all these programs and all this there's 80 means tested programs right now. The welfare system in America is spending over just under $1 trillion a year.
So when the government turned its focus on dealing with the problem of the poor, it resulted in a huge increase of government agencies, government regulations, government programs, that itself has become a problem.
Right. I mean, it really created all these agencies, as you say, but the other problem that comes with it is you have basically government only can rule by rule and regulation. You totally lose that family. You totally lose the opportunity where your parents corrected you. In a government system, you either qualify for the welfare or you don't. But you also don't have anyone saying, here's what you should be doing to get yourself back into work. I mean, they sort of say that, but they don't follow through with it, etc.
So you see a systemic change took place here in the United States when the government established the Great Society programs. We moved into a condition where government money, government programs, regulations became the real issues instead of the kinds of things that churches and families and society and neighborhoods would promote.
Absolutely. And basically, the statistics are really quite disturbing. At the time of the Great Society starting, it was something like about 7% of children were born out of wedlock. Today, it's in the high 30s or into the mid 40s that are born out of wedlock. You have a system right now where basically 42% of the children are not in a two-parent family. And that is very, very detrimental.
You have written that one of the key problems with solving the problem of poverty today is that we have children who are without guidance. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read an item that you have clipped from Juan Williams of the Fox News, which says that close to half of black men drop out of high school. High unemployment and high rates of out-of-wedlock birth leave too many of them without guidance. Given this reality, the violent behavior of young black men and the police response have become a window on racial fears. Now, there's a lot in here that's very politically charged in our politically correct culture today. But what I'm interested in hearing from you about is the role of families in the outcomes that we see in the behavior of people, especially for underadvantaged minorities.
The system has really allowed people to get by. There's so much money floating around. That $1 trillion is just an enormous amount of money that's out there. So basically, instead of forming lasting relationships where they nurture and take care of the children, and this is not just in the black community, this is in all aspects of America, has increased since this time of the Great Society. And so you lose that family unity that is so important, and to me it's child abuse.
So you're saying
by government.
You're saying then that government is actually damaging the proper role that families should play in our nation.
Absolutely, I totally. And out of the same piece that you're talking about is President Obama in 2008 at a church in Chicago is fully admitting that the male is not doing his portion of taking care of the family. Basically, government has taken the place of the male. Eloise Anderson, a great person who works in welfare, she's running the welfare system in Wisconsin today.
Yes.
And she worked previously for Tommy Thompson. But she basically says, and she is a black, and she's a very good friend, but she basically says government is taking over as the male in the family, but not doing male's duties.
Right. When you cite President Obama and what he had to say about that, and with which you are in complete agreement, it kind of takes this out of the political spectrum. It's not about being liberal versus being conservative. It's not about being progressive or being right-wing. There seems to be something fundamental about just American values here. In fact, we were kind of remarking during the break that you're proud to be a liberal yourself in the sense of George Washington or some of our founding fathers.
Yeah, I'm a classical liberal, which is we now call libertarian. But yes, this is a fundamental change. I mean, this. And Moynihan,
Patrick Moynihan.
Yes, senator, but even before he was senator, he said that we were this terrible problem that has occurred. He predicted it, and he did it. He was talking about the American blacks, but I know that he made a statement in a hearing that he said we may be doing generational change of terrible destruction, and not talking about the black alone. He's talking about all Americans.
You've used a phrase, and you've attributed it to the role of government today in welfare, destructive enabler.
I truly believe that it is. I think it's totally well intended. I think that people that are working in the welfare system are well intended, but it's the fact that you're talking about rules and regulations coming from Washington, D.C. to Hawaii or to my little town of Klamath Falls, Oregon. And those rules and regulations are what guide all the departments and all these different services. And and there's no discernment. There is no how I should be treating you. Should I be treating you harshly? Should I be on your back all the time saying you have to do this and that? Or should I be using kindness? Because every person is unique. We have rules and regulations that cannot be applied uniquely to person A and then
Sure.
person B.
When you say that the government is a destructive enabler, what comes to mind is that incentives are given. And these incentives are what lead people to behave in certain ways. And ultimately, if government is providing money and welfare benefits, whatever is necessary to jump through the hoops to get those is what gets incentivized.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's these huge, and part of that is these incentives sometimes really stop people from getting employed because they actually will take a cut in the amount of goods that come to them, goods and services
right.
and money coming to them if they take a real job.
Hawaii is ranked as one of the highest states in terms of per capita welfare benefits. And in a recent study, it was found that the average welfare recipient here in our state receives more than $60,000 in benefits in a year, and that amount is reduced should she, the typical average there, work more.
I mean, how can anyone expect to not have the skills to make $60,000 to replace that? You know, if you've been, and the tragedy is you lacking the skill, every day you're out of welfare, your skills go down. And it's just impossible to make $60,000 and really be productive and being valuable to an employer.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a moment. We live in a society in which the rich are getting richer, and it's a bit harder for the poor to survive. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
What about all those people out there who really can't work, who really need our help and so forth? Are you saying that we should cut the safety net underneath them?
No. I don't know how it should really look. I do think it should come back to the community. I very much believe in subsidiarity, getting it back to the community. But I do believe that we do need a safety net. But that safety net, really, to those that really cannot work, if it's bigger than 5 to 10% of the population, I'd be surprised. I mean, there are people that have real limitations, but most of those people really want to work, and there's ways to help employ those people. But definitely we need to have a safety net, but it should be community oriented.
Well, what I'm hearing you say when you use the word subsidiarity is that it should be based at the lowest level of neighborhood and community instead of at the highest level of government in
Correct.
Washington, D.C. So you're not talking about cutting a safety net. You're saying the issue should be transferred from Washington, D.C. back to the most local of neighborhoods.
I agree.
And when I look at local neighborhoods, the first safety net is my neighbor.
Absolutely.
Well, or before
your
the family.
family.
That's right, the family. Absolutely right. I'm glad you corrected me there. It's the family. It's when a parent takes care of a child, when a child takes care of a parent, a brother and a sister, and then it's a neighbor, it's a relative,
Absolutely.
and so forth. And most of that happens without the government having to come in and intervene.
Absolutely, absolutely. My grandfather went to the mines in Iowa at age 8. Welsh miner. Every Sunday, the Welsh got together in Des Moines, Iowa, and they had a big picnic. And the real reason was they distributed food to make sure everybody had food for the next week until the next picnic. He came out at age 64 and lived to 96. But the point is, that was a community, and they took care of each other. We don't need to go back to mines at age 8, but we do need to get back to family and community taking care of their neighbors.
So family and community produce compassion, not the federal government.
Absolutely.
We're talking to Judge Ted Abrams, who leads a national movement in getting people off of welfare and onto work. And when we come back, I want to ask him about an experiment that has become quite successful in Klamath Falls, and as well, the value of work. This is Kelii Akina with the Grassroots Institute. We'll be right back on Think Tech Hawaii in just a moment.
Guess what? Think Tech
There you
has
go.
more
Good
than
job.
tech
All right.
and energy
We got
and
two more of those.
diversification and globalism. We believe in improving the quality of life here in these islands, improving our society, and that includes building the arts. So we have a program coming up on October 27th at the Anthology Theater in Bishop Square called Hawaii, the State of the Arts. It's a double entendre. And we mean to investigate inspiration for everyone. We mean to ask the question, how can we best survive and thrive the arts in Hawaii, making a great state? A great state deserves great art, and great art is indicative of a great state. So we have 7 panelists in this downtown forum. We have Jonathan Parrish of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, Simon Crookall of Hawaii Opera Theater, Dina Dre of Diamond Head Theater. We have Pamela Taylor-Tong of Ballet Hawaii, Stephen Yost of the Hawaii Museum of Art. We have Yukio Ozaki, potter at Chaminade University. We have Gerard Elmore, a filmmaker at the Academy for Creative Media. We have a great panel. This will be a great discussion. You will find out what the state of the arts is here, what excellence we have achieved, and what excellence we are looking for. The ways we can survive the arts, the audience, the reach, the export, if you will, of our talent and our arts. Come down next Tuesday, October 27th, and see what happens with our panel.
Okay.
Sign up on thinktechhawaii.com. We'll see you there.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako. We're here every week on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Kelii Akina with the Grassroots Institute. That's where we love a venerable Hawaiian saying, e pule kako, which means let's pray together. But at Grassroots, we've also come up with this saying, e hana kako, which means let's work together. Let's work together to build a better government, economy, and society. It's not about political ideology, it's not about political parties, it's not about religion or race. Really, we are people who live together here in this island paradise and need to work together to keep it that way. So join us in building a better economy, government, and society. And today, there's a gentleman who's doing just that as he travels across the country with a message. And I have to say this, to some of us, that message might sound quite remarkable, because very often when there is need here in our town, one of the first things we say is, well, we need more federal funding. But this long-term judge and public policy expert has a different view of that, especially as we reach out to the poorest in society through welfare. Well, Judge Ted Abrams, it's been enjoyable talking with you today.
Very enjoyable for me, too.
Yeah, we really need what you are promoting, the idea that it's good to get people off of welfare and onto work, which I have to confess to you, it feels a little bit scary to say that in public because I'm fearing that people will misunderstand me and will say that I have no compassion for the poor.
Just the opposite.
The
Just the
opposite.
opposite is, how do you get a person to be self-sufficient? How do you help a person become part of society? Work is giving your power and putting your effort into producing things for you get the benefit of dollars, but the society gets the product of what you're producing.
So when people are incentivized not to work through various welfare programs, we actually do them a grave disservice.
Correct. And every day a person's not involved with society, every day a person is not involved with being productive, they're losing skills, but they're also losing their relationship with society. You know, let me give you this quote from Voltaire. Work keeps at bay 3 great evils: boredom, vice, and need. And think about that: boredom, vice, and need. And that's 250 years ago.
There we go.
In France.
Well, you know, and if we got rid, if we have too much boredom, vice, and need, that means bigger government, because that's basically what government deals with.
That's exactly right. And that's a bad byproduct of giving way, not allowing people to be really involved in society, and work is being really involved in society.
One of the focus areas for us as a think tank at the Grassroots Institute, we're, as you know, one of many think tanks across the country in each of the 50 states.
You're a great think tank.
Thank
you.
you.
Do wonderful work, but yes, one of 50.
One of 50, and you know that well because we're part of a network called the State Policy Network, and you sit on the board of State Policy Network. And
Correct.
So thank you for your work. But one of the areas of our research is free market solutions to homelessness. And so there are policies, free market policies our government could adopt that could actually help solve the problem of homelessness and poverty. One of them is this: get rid of or reduce significantly the rules for minimum wage. Businesses tell us when we have the minimum wage rising, they're just not going to hire people at the lowest levels. And it's very, very expensive and costly. But if we didn't have that minimum wage law, there's so many people who could be employed, who would be employed. It might not be as much as they would get with the minimum wage, but at least they get something, which is more than nothing. And so, do you see that there are public policy moves that could be taken, other ones as well, that could help us get, actually help the situation of poverty?
Yes, just briefly on minimum wage, I totally agree with you. It sounds great. As one person from another think tank says, well, $15 is what they're arguing for in Seattle and in LA. He says, why not $75?
There you go.
And the point is that you really are limiting opportunities for millions of people when you really do this artificially. But what we did, and what we did in Oregon, called the Full Employment Program, of how we really help people move into employment, was we made our program was really very unique. And it was started by a fellow by the name of Dick Wendt, who was a great entrepreneur. But basically, and he knew that it was really harmful for people not to be actively involved in work and be self-sufficient. So instead of having welfare and food stamps and the rest, we would offer a job for any, and all the person had to do was say, I need a job, and we'll offer a job to anyone.
So this full employment program was started by business people.
Absolutely.
It wasn't a government commission. It wasn't a government agency. Businesses and members in the community said, we're going to do something about providing people jobs. Tell me more about this.
Well, and that's exactly it. And it was, we'll take the money that is now going to food stamps and unemployment and welfare, and we will, instead of giving that money to a person, we will provide a person with a job. We also made sure that we, in your earlier example of how high the benefits are in Hawaii, we would actually make sure that no one took a cut in pay. So we made sure of that. But person did do work and did develop skills, and we did it with real employers. This was not make work. It was not a broom in the back room. It was real employers who we knew could always add, especially if they had a subsidized wage, they could always add another employee. So this person was treated like a regular member of the business, was paid by the business, and then the state reimbursed the employer. And it lasted for up to 6 months. It was unbelievably successful. The head of the welfare department, Sandy Hoback in Oregon, and the years that we did it were from 95 to 2000, where it was really active. She said that her employees' satisfaction was the highest that they ever had. And her clientele, the people receiving benefits, their satisfaction was the highest when we ran this program. And the employers that we got were, frankly, small employers.
Well, to recap, what is the incentive for a private sector employer to be involved in this? You've got somebody who's always looking at the bottom line, who's competing against other businesses. What incentive does he or she have to be involved in this program?
I came to the conclusion, I've thought about this a lot, but I came to the conclusion it was helping their fellow man. It was not so much that it helped their business. Some did, and I'll talk about that later. But they really were helping a fellow human being. And one of the things that we requested and required was that there had to be a mentor for the person in the from the business, and it wasn't an employer, it had to be a fellow employee. So that I could go to you and say, what are the unwritten rules, or what are the written rules and unwritten rules? How am I supposed to handle this situation? How am I supposed to dress? How am I supposed to respond, etc.? Very, very, very important. But what I really found was that the employers that did it more than any else were ones with truly small businesses, under 50, and they really helped a person migrate from leaving the world of work to entering the world of work and learning skills, and they got great satisfaction out of it. Don't get me wrong, I know of another business, a mortgage business, that everybody got to hire one employee, period. Otherwise it was a 10% rule, but etc. But we built the entire mortgage business, trained a person, hired her, trained another one, hired her or him, etc., and built a business of about 5 employees.
How about that?
Yeah.
Now I want to clarify this. This is a totally voluntary program. This isn't government saying you have to hire.
Correct.
And so individual employers could just simply not participate in it if they didn't have any incentive or desire to do so.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, there were a couple rules that were really important. But basically, yes. And we, the Gerald Wynn Corporation, which Dick Wynn founded and made doors and windows, we actually went out and recruited employers all over the state of Oregon.
How about that?
And because we wanted to make this thing work, but so we actually went out and worked hard at recruiting employers.
I would imagine at the local level, building a better community and society, taking care of one's neighbors, and challenging them and helping them to be employed, really is a great reward to community leaders and employers.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, we're going to go to a break in just a few minutes, but before we do, could you give us a little background on Klamath Falls? Because I think that was a great story of success in providing full employment program.
Well, just background, again, Klamath Falls was the headquarters for Gerald Wynn, and I guess the real background is that Dick started Gerald Wynn, and I think it's 58, but anyway, it's real close to 1960, and it was 15 employees, and Dick died about 5 years ago, but at the end of his life, Gerald Wynn produced more doors and windows than anyone else in the world, and had plants in Asia, had plants in Australia, Canada, and Europe. And so anyway, that's how that grew. Dick got into this in 1976, and it's not by happenstance that he did it in 76. He truly sat down and said, what can I do for America? And besides providing all these jobs and wonderful products, he looked at the welfare system and he realized that we were taking people out of the mainstream of American life, putting them on the sidelines, and then those bad habits that accumulate that Voltaire talked about 2.5 centuries ago take over. And so he's figured out how to do this and how to do it through the money that was already being used by government, but switching it to a subsidized wage program. And our success in Oregon was enormous. We reduced welfare by 60% in a 5-year period.
That's incredible.
And again, the head of the welfare department said that her satisfaction, both employee, and we had a hard time convincing those people to get into this program, the employees of her firm. But they were really into it when we got through.
Is there somewhere our viewers could get more information on what took place in Klamath Falls?
You could go to the fullemploymentprogram.org, and maybe I presume that you can get a hold of me somehow on that too. So
right there on the screen, we had that a moment ago there. Your website, which would you say it again?
Yeah, the American Institute for Full Employment, fullemployment.org.
Well, very good. We're going to take a break and come back and go into a bit of a conclusion today, but we're talking with Ted Abrams, a former judge who today is promoting full employment across the country. And I'm going to ask Judge Abrams an intriguing question, a little thought experiment. What would happen if the federal government completely got out of the welfare business? We'll be right back after the short message on Ehana Kako. Don't go away.
Hi, my name is
I'm
Kelii
gonna ask you that.
Akina. I'm the host of The Whole Gamut on Think
Would
Tech Hawaii.
Americans-
See us live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. or on our YouTube channel to hear us talk about world affairs from Hawaii and beyond. See you then.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island. I work in the ER there. But on Tuesday afternoons, I get to come and spend 45 minutes to an hour with Jay Fidel and the Think Tech staff. They're terrific professionals. They help us to bring some of the leading cutting-edge topics here across our state to you. So you can join us at our show on healthcare in Hawaii to talk with leaders from across all the spectrum of health in our state, or you can join us for any other show where we talk about economic development or tourism or some really eclectic programs too. So really, we'd love to see you here on our show. Thanks for joining us and thanks for supporting us.
Welcome back to the final segment of today's Ehana Kako here every week on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Before going, I do want to say thanks so much to the wonderful studio staff and team here at Think Tech Hawaii and producer Jay Fidel, producing 35 hours of original content, intellectually stimulating every week from our downtown Honolulu studios. We hope you'll tune in frequently, and you can find copies of this on thinktechhawaii.com. Now, the intriguing question I want to ask Judge Abram. Judge Abram, let's say the federal government had sequestration take place again and had to shut down all services, or even a permanent sequestration, and we shut down all welfare programs, and so we could no longer rely upon Washington, D.C. to take care of the needs of the poor and the disadvantaged in our own states and our own counties. What do you think would happen?
I think, and I really believe this very strongly, that immediately, immediately is a little bit too fast, but within 6 months to a year, you would have organizations coming together in the community to take care of those needs. We're way too humane to allow people to just die and starve to death. But there would be huge community, the communities would come together. The churches would probably be very, very powerful in doing this, but there would be a huge community response because there would be, there's so many people that are now dependent on that federal programs, all these federal programs. And these means-tested programs, I said earlier, there were 80 of them, and they put out a lot of product. But if that was suddenly stopped, community would start forming very quickly.
Well, you know, in our network of state policy network think tanks, we're doing thought experiments all the time. Some of the think tanks are putting forth the idea that maybe it's better for the states to take back the highways and get that out of the federal government and so forth. What are your thoughts in general about power flowing from the federal government back to the states where it originated?
I have been in favor of devolution for 20 years, but I think we have a huge opportunity at this particular time. Paul Ryan appears will now be the Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan really believes in that devolution. He has a program that is going to theory to send 9 of the welfare programs back to the states, and he just traveled with Bob Woodson, who is really a great hero in the welfare movement. Bob's a black, he's about 80, maybe 85. He really has, and he has an institute called Center for Community Enterprise, and he and Ryan traveled together to the various communities, not just black, but those communities. And so there is real movement to move that back. And if he's Speaker of the House, which it appears he will be in a position to really try to influence this. I think it would be one of the best things that could happen. And I think that I'm going to put all my effort into it.
Well, it would be an enormous shift. Health, education, welfare. Not only are they huge sectors of finances that come from taxpayers, they control life to a very high degree, health, education, and welfare. Do you think states can actually handle the health, education, welfare needs of their people?
I do. I truly do, and I think that particularly in the welfare side, I think the community can handle it, just a single community. I think that, but to do that, the community has to have total control, because if money comes, Ryan right now is talking about block grants, and Ryan really would give the states and communities a lot of operational control. But our experience with anything that comes out of the federal government, whenever they send it to the states in a block grant of any form, you also have all the rules and regulations.
That's right.
And that has to be broken. And I think in welfare in particular, community can handle it, and a community also, though, has to have the taxing power. So one of my theories is that you get it back to the community, and if the community is willing to take over, that it will reduce the community's federal income tax for every federal taxpayer in the community, but the community would have the opportunity to tax that person because they would be a member of their community.
So we really are looking at changes that need to take place at a macro level if they're going to be systemic throughout our country. We have to shift the flow of power from going from the taxpayer and the state up to Washington, D.C. We have to reverse that so that the flow of power and money goes back down to the most local level.
I totally agree. I totally agree, at least in welfare.
And it seems to make a lot of sense there, where in educating children, in raising families, in caring for the needs of our neighbors, the human factor of community is so important. I want to go back to a word that you used earlier. We didn't really parse out that word. It may be unfamiliar to many of us, subsidiarity.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means that if you have a community problem, it is and if it can be handled by the community, that you should have it handled in that community. In other words, it's the institutions that are closest to whatever the issue is that handle it. The person that really did it, made it quite well known, was John Paul II in about 1991 in an encyclical. He talks about subsidiarity, and he talks about you're actually, by the fact that it's coming in from the federal government and all the rules and regulations are coming in, you've taken away the opportunity for the community to be part of the solution.
Right.
So you want to have those issues, particularly in these social issues like welfare, to be a community-oriented and involve the community.
So subsidiarity restores a responsibility in the community, which is good for the community, and actually is a right of the community.
Correct.
There's another concept with which I know you're very familiar, because we work toward this end in the State Policy Network, and that is federalism, which is misunderstood by a good number of people because it sounds like growth of the federal government, but in reality, federalism goes hand in hand with subsidiarity by bringing power out of a federal government and back to its origins at the lowest level.
Absolutely correct. And yes, we at State Policy Network, which you obviously are very much a part of, we really do believe, and I think it's absolutely critical. And states have to start demanding. I actually go so that they do have the power to take care of their needs within their state. Don't get me wrong, there are things that should be, there are some environmental issues that should be, that go across state lines and all the rest. But we really have to take back most of the things that the federal government has usurped. And they've done it through the income tax. We send our money there. They send all the rules and regulations back, and part of the money back. And it's a terrible system.
Well, here in Hawaii, for many years, being out here all alone, the most isolated archipelago in the world, and being at least 5,000 miles from the West Coast, we came up with our own solution to providing health care, a public-private partnership, which ensured that at least 93% of everyone was covered through employers. And then the remainder were covered by a form of subsidiarity. They were covered by churches and charities. But then and it was so good that there were at least 5 states that were formally studying the Hawaii model, where a state would take responsibility. But then the federal government issued the Affordable Care Act. And it just has damaged our model here in Hawaii and left us with a state healthcare connector that has just gone bankrupt. It's a parable, in a sense,
Correct.
of how the federal government actually messes up some of the things that the states can do better. But I'm telling this story so that our viewers can be introduced to another term we use, federalism, power at the local level as opposed to the federal government, restoring that to the states, but competitive federalism. Competitive federalism, where different states come up with the best solutions, and through the free market of states, they rise up to the top. And that's why I'm so sad that we didn't get to compete here in Hawaii providing a solution that other states could use.
It's really tragic. It's very, very tragic, and maybe there will be an opportunity because there is a movement towards federalism. It's not real well organized at this particular time, but again, the State Policy Network keeps talking about it. And there is more and more states are realizing that they really should have power over most of their lives, not everything, but most of their lives. And as you said, the competitive part, Oregon could have learned really a lot from Hawaii on what your healthcare program was. It would have been really valuable to us in Oregon, and that's how civilization advances.
That's right. Unfortunately, now we've got a one-size-fits-all dictated by Washington, D.C. One of the things I appreciate about today's conversations, I've learned something and had some concepts reinforced for me. A lot of times we don't connect what's happening to the poor and the needy in our neighborhood with our views of government at a macro level in terms of federal government versus the state, but they seem intimately related. Sometimes we don't take concepts like compassion and realize that they can only take place between human beings who see each other and care for each other and are in each other's community, and get far removed when we rely upon a distant Washington, D.C. Any final thoughts for our viewers as we tie all of this together?
Work together with Grassroots and with the other think tanks in America. Seriously, that's a very powerful, very important movement, and it has progressed from very few organizations to doing the wonderful things you're doing, and it's competitive and it's productive.
Before we go, do tell our viewers a bit about the American Institute for Full Employment, of which you are the executive director.
Well, we're dedicated to getting the full employment program into every community and every state in the United States, and we know how to make this. I already explained the program a little bit, where we got real employers to work with real people who weren't quite ready for prime time, and get them an opportunity and train them. And it was about a 6-month program, and very, very, very successful. And we have been treading water a little bit in the last few years, but we'll be back full force and throughout America.
So if a community wants to take caring for those in need into their own hands, they can get basically a blueprint, a manual, consultation, anything else they need from your organization.
Absolutely.
Tell us again the website, which we've put on the screen.
Fullemployment.org.
Fullemployment.org. Well, Judge Abram, thank you so very much for being here in Hawaii with us today.
Thank you, sir.
And I wish you the best as you spread this message across the nation.
Keep up the great work at Grassroots. It's really wonderful.
Thank you. And one of the wonderful things at Grassroots, we get to work with Ted Abrams and others across the nation, bringing best practices together. Thank you for watching today. This is Ehana Kako on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Until next week, aloha.